Welcome to BW Wellbeing World. Today is the World Mental Health Day, and the theme that we have for this year is addressing psychological issues holistically. Now, when we're talking of holistic issues, it's a mix of medical concerns, which are like psychiatry, along with holistic modalities and therapies, which are also considered as psychology. So for us to make this conversation meaningful, we have with us three specialists who are experts in their specific areas. We have with us Dr. Nimish Desai. Dr. Nimish Desai is a psychiatrist who, after having served as a faculty of NIMHANS, Bangalore, and AIMS, Delhi, has spent a large part of his later career at IHBAS, serving as their director. He has been qualified as a public health professional, thus adding to his clinical, teaching, and research work. Joining Dr. Desai is Daniela uh, Redonich Bhandari, also known as Dana. I hope I pronounced your name correctly, Dana.
Perfect. Thank you, Harvinder.
She is a consummate health and well-being practitioner who has spent almost 30 years in medical and wellness space and has been trained by some of the greatest names in the fields of psychology, integrative nutrition, health coaching, clinical hypnotherapy, NLP, yoga, and meditation. Now, Dana strongly believes in the benefits of integrating science and spirituality, allopathic medicine with alternate therapies, and using technology and science to support this, yet knowing that the main power is inside of us. Joining Dr. Desai and Dana is Dr. Sameer Malhotra. Dr. Sameer Malhotra is currently working at the Max Healthcare as a senior director and HOD of the mental health and behavioral sciences at the Max Hospitals in Saket and Panchil Park in New Delhi. Over 2 decades of training and clinical experience at the prestigious institutes of the country like PGI, Chandigarh, NIMHANS, Bangalore, AIMS, Delhi. He's worked as a consultant, Department of Psychiatry and National Drug Dependence Treatment Center at All India Institute of Medical Sciences and the United Nations Health Service, and also is trained at the Medical Royal Colleges in UK. Welcome, Dana, Dr. Desai, and Dr. Malhotra. Thank you so much for taking out time to join us today. Dana, women have the privilege to go first. So my first question is going to be to you. Dana, since the theme of this year's Mental Health Day is addressing psychological issues holistically, let us begin with trying to understand the term holistic. In your work, you blend different modalities. Primarily, your formal training is in psychology and integrative nutrition health coaching. Could you please tell us more about the relationship between nutrition and mental health? Uh, because there's a term that I've been, exposed to called nutritional psychology. Both nutrition and mental health are gaining a lot of prominence in digital media today. So can you, for the benefits of our audience, help us understand what does this holistic word mean?
Thank you, Harvinder. If there is one word which would describe me, my personal and professional approach to life, I guess throughout my adulthood, it would certainly be the word holistic. So I'm always delighted and very passionate talking about it. So, although I would say that it has been somewhat overused of late, holistic refers to, as you mentioned, considering the whole person. So the body, mind, and spirit overall. And it is certainly absolutely relevant when addressing mental health as well. So, talking about different, as I call them, romantic relationships between different organs or systems in our body. One which has gained lots of popularity and deservingly so is the relationship between our gut and brain. So this relationship is primarily chemical and facilitated by vagus nerve. So all loving and not so loving chemicals produced in our gut can reach the brain, and the other way around. It's a two-way road. So the gut microbiome actually plays a significant role in mental health. Research shows that the imbalances in gut bacteria have been linked to mental health conditions like anxiety, depression, and even cognitive decline. And there is a growing interest in the gut microbiota's influence on brain function. So diets which are lacking in certain essential nutrients like omega-3 fatty acids, B vitamins, magnesium, zinc, etc., have been actually correlated with the high rates of mental disorders, or even talking about depression, anxiety, etc. So deficiencies in these nutrients actually affect neurotransmitter production, primarily serotonin and dopamine, which are very, very important when it comes to depression and other mental health issues which need to be addressed. It is said that more than 90%, some people say even 95% of serotonin is actually produced in our gut. Also, it's important to mention chronic inflammation, which has been recognized as a contributing factor to mental illness. So diets which are high in processed foods and sugars, unhealthy fats, can all increase inflammation. So whereas diets which are rich in fruits, vegetables, whole grains, lean proteins can reduce inflammation and support mental health. So as you mentioned, nutritional psychology or nutritional psychiatry studies actually this complex relationship between diet and mental well-being. So this is an emerging field. The term has been coined towards the end of the 90s. And but of late, it has really, as I said, gained much more emphasis um, in combining, diet as a part of the treatment for mental health disorders. So we would say food as medicine versus, medicine as food, which literally, if you see how much medication some people consume, it's like a handful of medicine. So yes, I do believe in food as medicine versus medicine as food, and it integrates principles of both traditional psychology and nutrition. So focusing on how food impacts mental health and how specific dietary interventions can be used to improve the outcomes. It's a very deep topic, and one can really talk a lot on this, but I think this is the shortest I could make it, just to introduce our audience to this.
Thank you so much, Dana. I think it is extremely important. The point that you made that, food as medicine rather than having medicine as a food. I think that's the key that is there. Dr. Malhotra, when we are talking about mental health, that has been gaining a lot of importance. I know we have come a long way when it comes to it not being seen as a taboo anymore, at least in the urban areas where people are looking at psychology, people are looking at mental health in a very positive manner, talking about depression, anxiety, and not considering it as a disease kind of a thing. But this kind of awareness is still not prevalent in the tier two, tier three as we would like to see it. What do you think needs to be done to promote the concept of mental health awareness in the tier two and tier three? I'm sure you're getting patients from these areas as well. What is your opinion on it?
Thanks for raising this question. I think it's quite pertinent. And it's not that the awareness is not building up, the awareness is building up. And There's a lot of stigma which was earlier associated because of paucity of treatments in the past and paucity of scientific understanding in the past. But over the years, with advent of technology, with newer molecules which have come up, with lesser side effects of medication which are coming up, we are seeing better improvements. We are seeing faster improvements. We are seeing improvement in the quality of life. And that is helping people shed this stigma in their head. At the same time, ignorance at times, breeds ailments, and ignorance also adds on to stigma. So if you look into yesteryear's movies, those were depicting psychiatric ailments in a very odd manner, and the treatments which were being shown were also as if they were quite barbaric. However, the whole scenario of treatment and management has changed over the years, right? And we all need to understand that as an individual, like rightly said by Dana also, that we all have a spiritual self, which is our soulful existence. We all have a mind, which helps us think, understand, perceive things. At the same time, we have a body, and all three are quite interrelated. And when we talk about mental health, we are not just talking about myself, and that my should not be very narrowly viewed. It also includes your family. It also includes the society at large, because everything is interconnected. Say if my mental health is not up to mark, it is going to affect my relationships, whether it is at my workplace. It's going to affect my productivity, whether it's my workplace, whether it's my home or my immediate environment. What we've also seen is a gradual drift with advent of technology towards more of a virtual world which is coming up vis-a-vis real time spent with family and friends. And everything is available, being made available at the click of the button. So nanotechnology catching up, our expectations are growing from each one. So it's as if, that balloon is blowing up for all of us. And everybody has a point up to which a person can tolerate and stress. Stress is not bad. In fact, stress helps in building resilience. But when everybody is in that tight balloon, which is blowing up slowly and slowly, expectations are going up, the support systems are getting narrower. That is shrinking. The support system is shrinking in a way. Life is becoming so-called too practical versus emotive, interactive, communicative. So when those things are happening, the stress levels are going up. At the same time, resilience is going down in terms of how to cope with that stress. The value systems are somewhat getting disturbed, confused. The basic principles of life and simple tenets of when we should get up, when we should be sleeping, we are defying nature. And the more we are defying nature, the more we are at the brink of something like a pandemic, a mental health pandemic, which requires addressal at different levels. So when we talk about building mental resilience, when we talk about building mental health, when we talk about removing stigma, I think it should begin from day one when the child attends school, in the school, at the school level, at home from day one, the kind of dialogue that we engage in, the kind of movies that are being produced. I think everything has an influence. So the way it is being viewed, and gradually, I think people are understanding the role of mental health, and mental health is not something which has been created by the individual. It is not that person's creation. It is something which is happening neurochemically. And many times I often say that maybe the Department of Psychiatry should be now called as the Department of Neurochemistry, which is more understanding, which gives you a level of it in a way destigmatizes, because many times mental health and psychiatry is viewed in a very different way, and that needs to be corrected. So we have to shed the ignorance from day one, and a lot depends on the mindset at which is operating at the family level and at the organization level, at the school level, even even in colleges, even in schools. If people have this ability to walk up to a counselor, talk about their problems without the fear of being stigmatized, ridiculed by the rest, without being made fun of, even with organizations, if the confidentiality is maintained. And from day one, if this is inculcated through sensitization workshops, through a general mass appeal, and all those steps are being taken by the psychiatric community at large to understand and to help people understand psychiatric ailments in a better way.
I
Media
totally
would also play an important role there.
Yeah, I totally agree with you that, we are making a lot of difference in the society today, but the education needs to begin while the people are in school. And I totally resonate with you when you say that the technology is kind of distant us from everyone else around us. In fact, my post today on Instagram was talking about this, where I said that we are all very super connected yet very lonely. So I think I completely resonate with what you're saying. Dr. Desai, let me come to you. uh, you have a lot of experience. What, in your opinion, should be done for individuals who are struggling with mental health issues like depression, anxiety, stress? Uh, and these are pertinent at all age groups. We've seen people being stressed at work. We've seen business leaders stressed with their responsibilities. We are seeing stress among children today, and we are unable to even recognize that stress. What do you think are the coping mechanisms that you advise at a general level that people can practice at home?
Hello, Arvinder. Let me start with this. There are three levels of mental health service needs that we might want to identify, and the National Mental Health Program now does that pretty well. One, diagnosis and treatment of mental health problems or mental health disorders. Now, what my friend Samir Malhotra was referring to as psychiatric disorders. Level two, psychological symptoms or distress or dysfunction, which we saw in plenty during the epidemic that we all referred to, right? Level three is positive mental health or well-being for people other than the group one or group two. So, in a sense, to paraphrase, there is a mental health service need for all of us. All of us can benefit from one or the other aspect being improved. To repeat, mental disorders, mental distress, mental wellness. Now, the needs obviously and the advice would be very different. For the question that you raised as part of your query to me, for people suffering from mental disorders, the first thing you need is empathy and compassion in the society, access and uh, reaching mental health service, continued recovery and rehab models, including everything that Samira and Dana have said. The major problem is the mental distress or the mental symptoms, psychological symptoms, psychological dysfunction. Allow me to go out on a limb here and say that from March 2020, when we began the epidemic, a whole lot of doomsday sayers who kept saying, including our own colleagues, that there's going to be a psychiatric epidemic following the epidemic. I knew from March, and it now stands to data, that there is and there was no psychiatric epidemic following the corona epidemic. Is there a psychological epidemic of distress, and was there one? Yes, positively. So what is, like Samar Malhotra was saying, and like you hinted, what has happened as a positive spin-off of the corona epidemic is that you've all begun to talk about all the three levels. We are concerned about people with mental disorders. No, that came forth. Those who were hidden or who were closeted, who were hesitating to step out and seek treatment, now are more forthcoming, as Samir and you both said. Most importantly, we have become aware of and willing to talk about psychological distress or symptoms. Okay, like it happened in the epidemic. We are all keen to say, okay, how are you doing? Are you feeling all right? I mean, depression became a buzzword, right? But let's differentiate depression as a day-to-day experience of blues or feeling low from depression, the clinical disease. And of course, the third level, mental wellness or positive mental health. Now, what the connection between them? Why should we worry about level 2 and 3? Level 3, if we keep well, we all feel better, productivity is better, our life is better. 2, it helps prevent psychological distress. So if you don't want to go from being mentally unwell to being mentally distressed, you better follow the positive lifestyle that you and Dana were talking about. Dana spoke at length. If you are mentally distressed, does it need you? Does it mean you require psychiatric help or professional help? Possibly not. Merely modification of lifestyle and some of what Dana was saying and what we all know as healthy lifestyle will help. if you want to avoid getting into mental disorders, better take care of the distress and the symptoms well in time. Right? So the three levels of mental service needs are important. I want to go back to what Dana was saying. Um, I agree with her about medicine as food or food as medicine. But what if I were to say this? Let's take medicine as medicine and food as food. Neither this nor that. Medicines are useful when they are life-saving. Food is very useful for preventive promotive work that we spoke about. You know, the I'm saying that because our population does tend to get very confused. While we in science understand this, issue of gut and mind and mental health and totality, academically, theoretically, we can keep splitting hair, but essentially, what matters is healthy lifestyle and identification of those who require professional help.
Thank you so much, Dr. Desai. I think it's a very important point that you've made, and how you differentiated between, mental disorder, mental distress, and mental wellness, and how weakening of mental wellness could lead you to distress, and very beautifully articulated. Dana, let me come back to you. Since we're talking of modalities, we're talking of coping mechanisms. I've heard a lot of people say that, I'm under stress, and when I'm under stress, either I go shopping or I do binge eating. So let's tackle the binge eating part of it. Uh, the buzzword here is emotional eating. Is it normal to eat emotionally sometimes? And when does it become a concern? When should somebody start moving away from seeing it as something which is all right, fun, people are making fun of it, versus taking it seriously and saying that, listen, something needs to be done for it? Because what happens is, everybody notices these things, we observe it, but we don't do anything about it, because we say कि यार ठीक है, stress चल रहा है, tension है, or let me speak in English, because it's stress, it's all right, it's because of stress the person is behaving that way. When is it a time for you to take it seriously and take professional help?
Oh, yes, we could all agree upon and acknowledge the fact that emotional eating is actually quite common human behavior, and it can be a normal way to cope with stress or emotional discomfort, from time to time. Eating also has always had an emotional component. So if you think of people celebrate with food, bond over meals, right? Often associate food with comfort and nurturing. However, it becomes a concern when it turns into a habitual coping mechanism, as you were talking about, something which begins to govern your life also, So coping mechanism to deal with some deeper emotional issues, and governing your life, overall. So occasional emotional eating, I would say, like, enjoying comfort food after a rough day, or just celebrating with family and friends over food, does not really pose a problem. So it's just a part of balanced emotional relationship with food, and it can actually enhance our social and cultural experiences, in a way, positively affecting our mindset as well. But if someone is using food regularly to numb, to distract from, to avoid emotional pain, so this can create an unhealthy pattern. And then it becomes problematic when emotional eating becomes that, as I mentioned, primary strategy for managing difficult emotions, rather than addressing them head on or finding healthier coping strategies or mechanisms. So when food is used not just in response to hunger, but to suppress or avoid these negative emotions, like it can be sadness, anxiety, loneliness, as you mentioned. People may not even be hungry, but they are eating to fill that, emotional void. So negative consequences would include weight gain, feelings of guilt or shame, actually, after eating, poor self-esteem, maybe even more serious conditions like binge eating disorder, actually. So additionally, emotional eating does not resolve the underlying emotional issues, and it just leads to a cycle of emotional distress and eating. So to break this cycle, the goal is to bring awareness. Awareness would be the keyword, I guess, to begin with, helping individuals recognize their emotional triggers, develop healthier ways to manage their emotions. So it can be from simple mindfulness, stress reduction techniques to therapy, much more serious therapy. So it can all prevent emotional eating from becoming destructive. So I would certainly encourage people to tune into their hunger and fullness cues and become aware when they are eating out of emotion versus true physical hunger. So this awareness can help individuals distinguish between emotional and physical needs. And emotional eating often ties into much, much deeper, actually, psychological factors, which can be even some childhood conditioning, stress, trauma. Food can become a coping tool, which is learned in early life and a response to unmet emotional needs. So the key is to uncover these underlying issues and then replace food with some more effective emotional regulation strategies. So it is very, very essential to show compassion toward oneself in this process, understanding that food and emotions are really intertwined, but finding balance in this relationship, just as with everything else in life, is actually a goal for so to say long-term well-being.
Dana, I'm going to just dig in further on this. When you're talking about emotional eating, it's not only that people start binge eating. There could be people who may be stopping to eat. They may stop eating. Uh, but most of these people, when, like I said, that when you ask someone, they say that, listen, I'm under stress, just let
Yes.
it, let's go out for dinner or let's do this thing. And a lot of people take on to alcohol and other things. But if they are conscious, and they know that they are under stress, they are facing anxiety for certain situation, are there certain foods that you say that, listen, if you are aware that you are under stress, you are aware that you are anxious, that then you should also be aware that these are the foods that could help you? Are there some foods that you say that, this is at this time, this is what you can consume?
Yes, so we would usually introduce foods which are more calming, not only foods, but different spices, different teas. I would actually begin with eliminating, certain foods. So as much as, let's say, sugar can, give you some instant, high. At the same time, it gives you a very deep low as well. So, then you end up on a roller coaster. So I would say, eliminating um, not completely sugar, just processed sugar. I mean, you can still, continue to have natural sources. Then very simple carbs as well. So just eating foods which sustain your blood sugar and which would be more sustainable even for your mood. So it would be all whole foods. You would have then certain spices and certain teas, so you would have chamomile or cinnamon or things which are very calming in nature. Usually all the fruits more or less would be calming, cooling down, right, the mind. So if you think in a sense of fire and water, so when mind is already on fire, I mean, you are not going to add more fire to it, right? So yeah, there are so many things which one can do. So with these foods, I would always first thing recommend breathing. So breathing with awareness, abdominal breathing, just allowing the body to get into that parasympathetic mode. Breath is actually the most powerful way of influencing our mind. The fastest way of actually, how do I say, reaching to our mind. So in the same way as the mind would affect our breath. So if you think of agitated mind, how you breathe faster, or when the mind is calm, how you breathe deep and long. So when you reverse, I mean, the same you would be with deep, steady, long, breaths. You would be sending the same message to the brain. So it's not, it wouldn't be like only foods, but it would always be a combination of simple things if you can begin with these lifestyle changes. But if not, it's also important to recognize when you require, help, next step of, help required. I don't know if we have the time. I mean, I would love to share with you. Actually, I remember the one client I had. Maybe I'll just, I don't know if you're okay, if I can just share that.
Very,
Sorry?
very briefly,
Very
Dana.
briefly, yes. I had a client and he was in a very famous health and well-being coach, actually. And he found himself eating enormous amounts of fruits. Actually, at a point, he was only on fruits, but only fruits which were round and quite big. So he would have like papayas, watermelons, sometimes apples, but, mostly these big round fruits. And it was quite strange for him, he was completely perplexed. So we did this regression therapy. We went into his childhood. He found himself sitting in the kitchen. His mom was also into health and well-being, very cautious of what her child was having. So he was on this swing, little child, I don't know, 3 years old or something, I can't remember. So every time he would crave for his mom's love and attention, he would just give him this apple, to comfort him. And, that was like substitute for mom's love and affection. So he was all the time on the move, traveling a lot. And whenever he would feel low, especially like during Christmas and, all these times when like family bonds, he would go for these, for a child, apple is not as small as it is for us, I guess. So the way mind creates, all these connections. So he would just go for these enormous amounts of enormously big round fruits. So, you can just see how incredible, the connections which mind creates since your childhood can be. And then, of course, through therapy, you once you identify the trigger, then you can move on. But just for our audience to understand that not everything makes sense, and it's not very easy to identify the cause of something. So that's why you can introspect, you can reflect upon, but sometimes it's really good to look for help as well.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
this, Dana. Uh, Dr. Malhotra, uh, there are various reasons why somebody could be stressed. Uh, going from going one step further from handling our emotions, how do we deal with something that we often hear and read about, such as toxic relationships, emotional abuse? One is, if you can explain what an emotional abuse is, and also maybe, you can also share some example of what would be emotional abuse, because many times it may get unnoticed. People may not be even realizing that they're being emotionally abused at home or at work.
Uh, Very relevant question. And we are seeing this quite often. when we look around. It's quite often. It's not something which is very uncommon. It's quite common, and I think it affects many. Emotional abuse is when, see, abuse is a word where you're using something as a tool to perhaps gain something out of it, causing emotional distress to the other person. So it becomes an emotional abuse there. So if you don't do this, that, and the other, then these are going to be the repercussions. And those are emotional repercussions, those are relationship repercussions. As a result, the human beings would want to buy peace. They would like to be in sync with themselves and their immediate environment. Most of them, majority. So when that equilibrium is disturbed by another person to fulfill his or her immediate needs at the cost of the emotional connect that the other person shares, it creates a lot of dissonance and distress in the other person. Most people who get into this kind of an abuse, the perpetrators, suffer from personality disorders. And at times they might have a shade of sadism in them. And the person who tolerates or becomes a victim may have some masochistic tendencies, or at times is the person who's wanting to have some peace in his or her immediate environment. Many times, the victim further victimizes himself or herself out of the fear of social stigma and to maintain that superficial calm in the immediate environment. And that takes a toll on that person's health. So, tolerating that level of emotional abuse over a period of time by a person who perhaps suffers from a personality disorder like borderline personality or narcissistic personality disorder puts the victim, in a very difficult situation. And that person who becomes a victim, knowingly, unknowingly, unwittingly, his or her quality of life deteriorates. His or her productivity deteriorates. And in a way, that becomes a reinforcer for the abuser to continue to engage in the same kind of abuse and getting his or her way out. So that's quite difficult. And these situations become quite tricky also as to how to handle them, because the victim victimizes himself or herself further, can land up in a state of depression, anxiety, distress, even reaching a level of suicidal behavior. The other person who's a perpetrator continues to do that out of his or her underlying narcissism or borderline personality. And many times people who engage in that kind of an abusive behavior also engage in some parasuicidal behavior, wherein they would make series of tentative cuts to show that they are trying to kill themselves to get their means out of it. And the other person, the affected person, the victim, then needs to their demands in order to prevent any such negativity from happening. So on one hand, the victim suffers from anxiety. The perpetrator perhaps has an underlying personality disorder, cluster B or impulsive personalities as we know them, as an underlying cause. And they need treatment. They need treatment. It has to be corrected. But there's a way to go about it.
Got it. Dr. Desai, would you want to just turn your tab horizontally? Yes, it's perfect now, sir. Dr. Desai, since we are talking about, just taking a cue from what, Dr. Malhotra just said, a lot of toxic relationships and toxic environment, which we may not realize as adults, could be happening in the schools, right? We know that most of the schools today are under obligation to have a special educator, especially for ADHD kids and autistic kids who are being admitted in the schools. But do you think it should be mandatory to have mental health counselors in every school, or to have the teachers be trained specifically in understanding the kids' mental health issues so that the challenges could be recognized well in time and something could be brought to the attention of either the school authorities or the parents uh, in time? before it is too late.
You're spot on. You're perfectly spot on. Bingo. The good news and the not so good news are these. The good news is that some 2 or 3 decades ago, beginning with megalopolises like Delhi and Bombay, and now to tier 2, tier 3 cities also, not only special educator for disability inclusion, but also mental health counselor is obligate. The not so good news is that at least some decades ago, the while the school management employed counselors, they were mostly used as teachers because the sensitivity to mental health that we are all talking about today was pretty low, if not adverse. But that fortunately has changed. The epidemic has helped, other changes have helped. And so today, hopefully, I believe correctly that this situation in the schools is better than it was. Is it anywhere near where it should be? Possibly not. We are on our way up there. Important part, Harvinderji, is also this, and let me say this. With all respect to Sigmund Freud and the psychoanalytical school, the traditional psychology and psychoanalysis has emphasized the issue of parenting and early upbringing and the role of parents in personality development fairly well. What has been missed in the process, I believe, and a whole lot of psychology and social science people believe, is the influence of peer group that you are referring in residential or non-residential schools, colleges, even up to early adulthood. It's your peer group that actually matters equally in personality formation as parents and parenting does. So you brought this up very well. School and college mental health, youth focusing on peer development is hugely important. But can I, for a minute, go back to what you were asking, Dr. Samir Malhotra, and what Samir was describing so well? See, the trouble, my friend, is this. By now, the relationships are getting toxic, and because of toxic relationship, because of the stress that you talked about, people are now becoming more and more individualistic and isolate. So as you must know, I'm sure, and I'm sure my friends Samir and Dana know, but for our audience, one of the biggest risk factors for non-communicable disease, heart disease, diabetes, what have you, hypertension, is now identified as loneliness. What you had said in between, what Albert Camus said, if you remember, feeling lonely in a crowd. So there's a whole lot of people around, at workplace, in the cities, but everybody is feeling lonely. So one end of the spectrum, unfortunately, is toxic relationship that Samir described so well. The other end of the spectrum, sadly, is in actual physical isolation or at least emotionally loneliness. And so, how do we try and get back to meaningful relationships? One, two, healthy lifestyle that Dana and we are talking about, from food to everything else. Allow me to mention here that some 30 years ago, the World Health Organization identified 4 major behavioral risk factors for health, including mental health and all the non-communicable diseases. You know this very well, I know. Diet, physical activity, alcohol, tobacco. Now, add to that the whole issue of loneliness. So that's the social milieu in which we are dealing with. And to connect with what Samir had mentioned in his initial remarks, the digital innovations have taken most of us away from real life to real life. You see, most of us are living in virtual world, you know, and the growing up kids living in virtual world is actually bringing about a whole lot of physical and mental problems. I must underscore here to our listeners, physical and mental health cannot and should not be seen as separate compartments. We have all written those essays in school, healthy mind and healthy body. But somehow when it comes to real life, we seem to forget that. And so the mental health is important not only for those 3 levels of mental disorder, mental distress, and mental wellness, but mental wellness and identification, reduction of mental distress is very crucial to overall health.
Got it, sir. I think that is very beautifully explained. And in my opinion, sir, what is happening also in the schools, while we are focusing on the mental health of children, we are also sometimes we forget the mental health of the teachers. Because if you remember, in India specifically, the teachers were taking this profession or choosing this profession because, you need to work half day so you could focus at home. But the profession has undergone a sea change. Today, the teachers are working until about 4 or 5 in the evening. Then they carry work home. And because of choosing this profession, they are also expected to contribute towards household work. So I think the mental health, when we are looking at, we should also be looking at the mental health of teachers, because unless they are mentally strong, you can't expect mentally strong children in the school.
All carers,
All carers.
teachers, doctors. Can I just butt in and also
Yes.
remind ourselves that this beautiful thing that you do from BW, and on this day particularly, on Mental Health Day, uh, this year the global theme is let's prioritize mental health at workplace.
Workplace.
Now, while that's very important, including schools, as you said, but I have to say this, like you highlighted, you know, women used to take to teachers' jobs very easily, as you said. Now, the trouble is that working women, especially working women who are mothers, their mental health and health issues are totally neglected. To take it one more step further, and not to get politically leaning, but lower middle class, and middle class working women, especially working women who are mothers, who cannot get paid help easily. See, I'm not saying I'm not worried about the upper strata working women, but upper strata working women get paid help. Lower and middle class working women and working mothers do not even get paid help. And so, really, we need to, amongst the priorities in mental health, focus on workplace, focus on working women mothers, because that is what is going to build the next generation. And so, that young kid of today, if he or she does not get a good school atmosphere or a good peer group or a good home influence, God help us.
Absolutely, sir. Absolutely. Dr. Samir, I'd like to also, I know you raised your hand, you wanted to contribute to that earlier question. But I also, while you are answering that question, I also want you to, because something that comes to my mind is, since we are talking of mental health at the workplace, and we have seen certain cases come to light recently. What do you think should be the responsibility of the business leader to ensure that we are creating happy workspaces? And I'm choosing this word very consciously, happy workspaces, because this could be beyond just trying to put in a table tennis table in this office, or trying to put a Nintendo in the office, because there could be just recreation, but it may not be contributing towards happiness. So, what, in your opinion, is a message to the business leaders of today?
The question is quite pertinent, keeping in view the theme for this year, which I think is very, very important. When we talk about workplace, look at it two ways. One is the structure, the other is the functional or the conceptual part of it. Structurally, many organizations have added many things structurally, right? But functionally and conceptually and expectation wise, there are many hidden and underlying expectations out of our employees which are unrealistic. There are working hours which can be very unrealistic. They do not get enough offs in between. They don't get to spend time with their family and their friends to have some bit of recreation, because that's seen as loss of economy. Whereas I feel if you are given some time to yourself to pursue some constructive hobbies, interests, some further academic pursuits, which later add on to the organization, you come back well restored in terms of your energy levels, and you bring in more economics to the organization. It's the other way around. So I think more than happy, it's about creating a relatively stress-free environment, a place, and many a times there's this middle order management which is not quite sorted at times, right? The top notch would not even get to know what is happening at the ground reality. So as leaders, I think we have to create those channels of communication which are important. I'm not talking about complete breach of hierarchy because that will lead to anarchy, but some channels of communication, some bit of transparency, some clear, healthy corrective measures in place without the fear of being stigmatized, ridiculed, or fired. Those things are very important. Many times, sufferers who are suffering from psychiatric ailments would keep it to themselves out of this fear that if we say this, we'll become the talk of the organization, we'll be made fun of, we would not be given important roles and responsibilities, or tomorrow we might be shown the door. As a result, there's delay in treatment seeking. They have to spend much more on their treatments, even if the organization can provide it for. So concepts have to be corrected. And when we talk about concepts, I think that eye of empathy is required. And that eye of empathy, yes, through sensitization workshops, but also from day one when we are born, the way we see our environment. Home environment is the first teacher, like they say, isn't it? Then your school. If we imbibe that empathy, where we stop making fun of anybody suffering, whether it's mental or physical health, and we start bringing in this tool of empathy, help, caring, and giving that little extra special attention to that person in need for the right reasons, I think that goes a long way. It's going to take lot of effort in all domains. It's going to be a multi-pronged, multi-nodal approach.
Got it.
Right? But conceptually, we must cut down on certain working hours. We should give some flexi hours of work also. Hybrid models have also come into place after COVID, which has also helped many people, particularly working mothers. That has really helped them. Understanding there could be some ailment in the family and giving those offs which are required. A platform where a person can verbalize without the fear of being, ridiculed in any which way, and finding solutions to those problems. Many times it could be a narcissistic boss on your head, who's basically having some sadism or element of sadism. May not be the top leader, maybe a middle order. And because of that, you start losing trust in the organization, which is not fair either to the individual or to the organization. And many times that creates many roadblocks and that lowers the economics. Even if we are working on the economy model, it lowers the economy generated by the organization. So I think healthy community brings in more economy rather than unhealthy individual or a mindset.
Got it. Dana, I have a question for you for technology, but because he used the word, the peer group, I'm going to, before that, ask one question to Dr. Desai. Dr. Desai, I was writing, I'm actually penning down a book called Defeating Cancer, where I'm studying the stories of cancer patients, survivors, oncologists, and spiritual masters as to what goes beyond medicine and doctor to help get cured fast. But when we were talking about the peer group or people around you, you also see something called toxic positivity. This is a concept that I learned when I was writing this book. You have people around you, but rather than trying to give you something which is correct for you, they're saying, sab theek ho jayega, don't worry, this happens, let's just go with it, have patience, you're just feeling bad, don't take it personally. What do you have to say about toxic positivity in a work environment, sir?
Terrible, terrible, terrible. Toxic positivity or false reassurances, non-specific, reassurances do not help. Like Samir and I would say, and I'm sure all of four of us would agree. Let's identify people's difficulties with empathy, with no judgmentality, and guide them to proper health. Allow me to about what you're saying, Arvindaji. Very quickly, I'll try and share with you. I wish visually we could do that. I have this wonderful cartoon that I use where two ladies are sitting on a park bench, and I'm taking it to the next step. So one lady is saying to the other, "Hey, why are you feeling depressed? Life is so nice, everything is good around, we have everything." And the lady turns around and says, "Why are you feeling breathless because of your asthma? We have plenty of air." The point that I'm making, Ravindraji, is that, like Samira and I are saying, ask those who are suffering what they are going through. Judging that from outside doesn't help. And this unfortunately happens with the invisible, so called invisible and mental health problems much more than physical health problems. And so the first thing we need to recognize is non judgmentality, empathy, acceptance, and stop sermonizing. This whole thing of get up and get going, it become all right. For God's sake, cannot, it does not. And please try and understand what I am going through at a point of time in depression. Empathy, that compassion will actually help.
Yes, Dr. Samir, you raised your hand. You wanted to say something?
Even when there are teams and organizations, many a times the person who's lower in hierarchy doesn't get the recognition, even after having worked very hard. And that demotivates that person. So when we are talking about work atmospheres and creating healthy environment, positive reinforcement model helps. That achievement should be rewarded, if not anyway else, but verbally. That feeling of creating a we feeling within the organization helps. So we over we me is what I would suggest there. Acknowledging even the lowest hierarchy person working who's worked hard, recognizing his achievement, and that gives other people in the organization also the motivation to kind of go ahead, so that the effort is recognized with gratitude.
Absolutely. I completely agree with you. I think, yes, sir.
No, Munna Bhai is Jadoo ki Jappi to that worker on the
Absolutely.
floor.
Absolutely.
There can't be better example than that
Absolutely.
about what Sabir is
Absolutely. There are things beyond, gratification, which are, like your increment or a gift and all. I think, just acknowledging the presence and acknowledging the efforts, and a pat on the back does wonders. Dana, let me come back to you. Since we were talking of technology, Dr. Samir Malhotra also brought out, the technology and connectedness, etc. One of the challenges today, especially post-pandemic, when we have had the work from home culture, people are more connected on WhatsApps today. The lines, the boundary of work time versus personal time have kind of blurred. When people send you a WhatsApp, if it is coming from your boss, it you perceive it to get your immediate attention, and your perception is that you need to respond to it immediately. It can't wait until tomorrow. Do you think that technology and the access to social media is consuming the human being more than anything else? And what is your view on this?
Well, social media has overall made, especially talking about health and wellness space, all such health and wellness information, of course, more accessible than ever before. When I would just like to actually go back to the work space, as all of you were discussing, I was just thinking how the entire arena of work environment has never been as complex as it is now, because if you look at different kinds of generations coexisting under one roof, and how different they are. So if you think of baby boomers, generation X, Y, and now generation Z, which is 1995 to so now they are also right in a workplace. So how different is the generation of baby boomers to generation Z, like in the way they grew up, their attention span, their focus, their lifestyle. It is so different. And then Dr. Malhotra was saying, mentioning, so if you have a boss who is, I don't know, I don't really like to stereotype now, or like put certain pictures in minds, but let's say just to, go to certain extremes. You have, I don't know, narcissistic, baby boomer dealing with ADHD Generation Z, employee. How much awareness is actually today needed at the workplace, just to understand and manage, the dynamics of all these different, generations coexisting. It's amazing. It's really, I just think that it's so deep, and it has never been, there has never been so much need of, approach towards a workspace from the perspective of mental health as probably it is today. And then Generation Z, their connection with the social media, not only their connection, I mean, we are all connected, but they just have completely different connection with it. So the sheer volume and content from the social media can sometimes actually lead to quite unrealistic expectations, even unhealthy behaviors, because social media platforms are flooded with influencers, fitness experts, wellness advocates, promoting healthy living, as Dr. Malhotra and Dr. Desai were mentioning, narcissistic behaviors, toxic relationships. I mean, we've never heard, so much gyan about all this as right now that exists today on social media. So while this can be really empowering and educational, sometimes it can actually create overwhelming pressure to achieve that perfect health, leading to certain feelings of inadequacy or stress when people feel that they are not doing enough. I would like to maybe introduce at this point one term. It's called orthorexia, actually, orthorexia nervosa. I don't think it's in DSM as eating disorder, but still, this term refers to actually, so to say, unhealthy obsession with healthy foods and eating properly. So with eating only pure, only clean foods. So unlike any other eating disorder, which primarily focuses on quantity, like anorexia or bulimia, in orthorexia the focus is on the quality, but it's this over exaggerated focus on the quality. So while it may begin with the good intentions, with the pursuit of certain idealized version of health, it can actually spiral into fixation that actually harms both physical and mental well-being. So there's certain rigidity about your diet. There is so much emotional distress, anxiety, guilt, self-judgment, and there's risk actually of health risk, because sometimes there can be nutrient deficiencies which can occur when you avoid the entire food groups. So it's healthy to eat only broccoli and clean chicken and or eggs, and you're just eating that for days. So wellness culture is actually meant to enhance our well-being, but it crosses the line when it starts to create stress, social isolation, preoccupation with perfection, because true well-being should involve balance, physical health, emotional resilience, social connection, rather than just singular focus on clean eating or any kind of rigid routines. So balanced approach to food, lifestyle always allows for flexibility, enjoyment, but anything restrictive like this orthorexia can actually deprive people from joy and spontaneity, and all these are crucial aspects of our well-being. So balanced perspective, I would highlight, is the fine line between a genuine interest in healthy living, especially when it comes to social media, versus obsession with which ultimately actually harms our well-being.
That's very beautifully put, because I think, one of the challenges that I have observed, at work, in personal life, with people around, is that one, uh, like I said, we are consumed by social media. But the challenge is, in social media today, you have experts, but you also have people who are enthusiasts and not experts who are sharing information, which is actually doing more disservice than service to the community. And people are following that. Second challenge about social media is that we are so obsessed with the outcomes that we get everything at a click of a button using our phone. We want something at night. I remember as a kid, we would have to wait until the next morning when the shops would open. Today at night, if you forget something that you need for school the next day, you can just blink it and get it at home. When this generation does not receive something instantaneously, they become anxious. I think that's one disservice that the technology is doing to our community. We could go on and on. This is well-being, and holistic well-being is such a vast subject. But before I close, I have one question. Any one of you or all of you might want to do it, because it is something which is the need of the hour, especially keeping in mind the theme for this year, which is well-being and at the workplace, is recognizing burnouts. It is at every level. Earlier on, it used to be associated with only the top management bosses that there's a burnout, but today we're seeing burnout at every level. How does one recognize burnout at every level at the workplace? And second is, how do we get over the stigma of saying that, listen, I'm done with my day's work. It's okay for me to leave office on time because I have a commitment to my family or my personal life, without being seen as somebody who's not hardworking or somebody who's not contributing to the work at the workplace. So anyone who wants to go first, please feel free. Should I choose? Dr. Samir, Dr. Samir, would you want to comment on it first?
It's quite relevantly put. Now, two things. The second part has a very difficult answer, isn't it? There's no quick answer to that. The first one, yes. But before I say that, I think the first relationship that we have, we talked about toxic relationships. We are talking about work environment. That's also a relationship with your atmosphere around you. The first relationship that all of us have is with our own self. And we all have a conscience. We all have basic needs to fulfill. And we also have to draw balance between our conscience and the basic needs that we have to fulfill. It begins from there. And then comes your relationship, whether it's with your senior, your junior, your subordinate, your family members, they all come later. First relationship is with your own self. I think one has to be honest there. And one has to be a little less punitive there. One has to be a little more accommodative there. Flexibility, balance, those are the key words. And I think no technology is bad. No workplace can be labeled as good or bad. But as human beings, we tend to put quick labels, quick judgments. We overreact to situations, and that's where situations go out of hand many a times. And that needs to be corrected. So it comes from working on oneself and then on one's immediate environment. And yes, there has to be, like we said, sensitization workshops at workplace where we are able to identify problems and rectify them rather than putting a label and ridiculing that person. I think we need to understand, even if it's a difficult boss, we need to understand the mindset. Maybe it's coming from some sense of insecurity, which needs to be corrected and treated in time. And balance, I would say, is the buzzword. That's a key to any such situation.
Dr.
Balanced, rational, empathic approach is going to help.
Got it. Dr. Desai, what would be your view?
The buzzwords I pick up from both these colleagues are balance and flexibility. Even about work hours. Uh, Recently on a TV channel, we were discussing about how Mr. Narayan Murthy said youngsters of today should work 70 hours. Right? And so, as against what you were saying, Harbinder, my point is that for those who feel comfortable working 70 or 80 hours a day, let them be. If the organization and individual are happy for a certain period of time. Those who want to work 20 or 40 hours, let them do that. So as Samir said, flexibility, including not deciding for others what's good. More importantly, I am so glad about what Dana said, because this overfixation with health, overfixation with food, overfixation with any such good asset or value can be a bit of a problem. And I want to jump from there to being fixated with perfect mental health. I do believe that while we have the need in this country, South Asia and Afro-Asia, to increase mental health awareness, there is a serious danger of over-psychiatricizing human existence or over-psychologizing human existence. I will not name, but one of the major powers in the West has actually done that, and let's not repeat that mistake. Let not every day-to-day instance or problem of behavior or emotion be termed a psychiatric or a mental health problem and given medicines or counseling. Life is fine as it is. For those who require help, yes, we need to get help to them. Let all of us others lead a perfectly normal, spontaneous, happy life without needing a psychiatrist or psychologist always.
Got it. So, Dana, we began with you and we'll let you have the last word.
Oh, wow. Thank you. So, as Dr. Malhotra and Dr. Desai were identifying the buzzwords, the keywords, so balance, flexibility, both, just kind of had this immediate association in my mind to yoga. I mean, through yoga, personally, I practice yoga every day, and yeah, it's all about balance and flexibility. What is yoga? Unity. Yeah, and I would, since we are buzzing here, I mean, I would just add one more word. Actually, Dr. Malhotra, I think, mentioned compassion, but both compassion towards others and self-compassion. And in some earlier well-being, during some earlier well-being event, I spoke about cultivating internet. So, internet versus internet. So knowing ourselves, making that connection, inner connection, stronger, more loving, more compassionate, so that all our outer connections can be a reflection of that. So I guess,
I don't want
yeah.
to bypass Harbinder's desire, but Dana, Samir, and Harbinder, can I say, in addition to balance and flexibility, synchrony?
Uh-huh. Yes.
Synchronize all parts of your existence. It is important, Harbinder.
I
And
totally
one more
resonate.
addition,
Yes,
in
sir.
terms of enhancing your definition of self, self should not be just what is skin deep. Self also includes your immediate environment and people whom you are connected to or are a part of life of.
Yeah, so in
Absolutely.
terms of unity, right, as I mentioned, we are all one. So in terms of that oneness, yeah, I guess we can conclude with oneness. We all agree upon that.
Dr. Desai, you wanted to say something?
No,
So,
I'm done. Let's
I,
all be happy.
yeah,
But
yeah.
let's not chase happiness.
That's a very powerful statement that you just made, that we need to be happy and not chase happiness, because that could actually become the cause of our unhappiness.
Unhappiness.
So it's been a beautiful conversation. And Dana, I loved when you said that internet versus inner net.
Internet.
That's very beautiful. But I have a certain few takeaways from this conversation. It has been beautiful conversation, and I can tell you that I could just go on. Apart from the questions that I had planned, there were questions that were just coming in, and I could go on for another 1 hour as well. But a few things that I loved when you said, Dana, the romantic relationship between the gut and the brain needs to be recognized. And it brought me back the thoughts of when I was a kid, and when my grandfather, because that is a time when Ayurveda, holistic health was actually booming. After it's a full 360-degree cycle that we are seeing today. And when a Ved would actually talk about ki, is your stomach well? Are you getting your bowels? Are you clearing your stomach? If not, then there's something wrong in the body. From that, I think it's a very beautifully summed up. Second thing, when we talk about creating awareness, Dr. Samir, when you were talking about tier 2, tier 3 cities, apart from, I think the mistake that media as well as a lot of us in the industry are making is we're trying to put numbers and throw the numbers across to people. They are not able to relate to it, because At the end of the day, it is not, if it is not affecting me, then I'm not so concerned about it. Maybe subconsciously not concerned about it. But I think what we need to do is to understand the power of storytelling and use storytelling as a way to communicate to everyone in the country. Um, the right message needs to go out. The right message about creating positivity. You know, in the end, Dana, what you were talking about, the obsession with perfection, while it looks very nice, but it is a cause of stress and anxiety. Then, Dr. Desai, what you and I were talking about, beginning our education at the school level. You know, on the World Heart Day, when I was talking to cardiologists and we were talking about doing CPRs, there's no point in going and teaching somebody in an office about CPR because he'll be fearful of hurting the other person. Many of us have been trained in it, but we are scared to give the CPR to the person because we feel we might be breaking his ribs, or am I doing right or wrong? But when you have been taught in school, you are fearlessly in a position to go act upon it when there's a need. Same thing needs to happen for mental health. Dr. Desai, you also spoke about empathy and access. That is very important. You spoke about the four behavioral factors: diet, physical, alcohol, tobacco, and then you brought up that we need to add and make it five, and that is getting over the fear of loneliness or experiencing loneliness. And so that is a very, very powerful thing. And I'll end with the last thing that came up, and we all agreed on this, that we need to create a balance and flexibility in our lives. It's okay to not be okay. It is okay to not be perfect. It is okay to be late as long as it is not harming anyone else. And I think with that, I'd like to conclude and say thank you and express my gratitude for taking our time to be with us. It has been a really meaningful conversation. Thank you so much, all of you.